Hello, and welcome to Here We Are, the mindful podcast for millennials, where it's all about remembering where we've been, knowing where we're going, and taking up space in the present through the art of storytelling. I'm your host, Teka, and I'll tie together the practice of presence and life lessons with faith and mental health nuggets too. Whether sharing my own experiences or featuring a special guest, I hope to inspire you to take control of your story and take control of your life. I hope you receive what you need from today's episode. And remember to check out the show notes in the description for links that I reference. Ready? Let's journey. And welcome back to Here We Are, the mindful podcast for millennials. If you are watching today's episode, then you already noticed our special guest, who is a guest from a previous episode, season 1, episode 7, Sister to Jailbird, which is one of our most popular episodes over time. It actually blew up like months after it was published. But I want to welcome back Alexandra. Hey girl, hey. You are so welcome. So I'm glad to have you back, but I want to first kind of like talk about the previous episode that you joined me on because, of course, I published the episode. I can't remember the exact month, but I feel like it didn't get traction until a couple months later, and it started to blow up on social media and YouTube. And so I'm curious of the outcome or kind of your experience when the episode started to really get some attention. What was that like for you?
Yeah, so I think I experienced the same as you. I didn't really receive much feedback from people initially. And then I posted a reel that went really viral and it just attracted a lot of people to my page. And with that, more people, I think, started watching or listening to the podcast episode. And with that, people started reaching out and telling me that they had similar experiences. More than one person told me that they had almost identical experiences. One, they no longer speak to their sister. The other didn't have police involved, but they still have a relationship with their sister. So I think it's so interesting that so many people have similar experiences.
Yeah. Oh my God. So, with people sharing that they had similar or even identical experiences, how did that feel? Because, that's part of why I do this podcast, right? Like your story can inspire, encourage, or really resonate with someone. And so, knowing that people had very similar experiences, how did you feel? What was your response?
I guess I felt less alone. I wish that my experience did not go as far as it did. And we would have been able to, I don't know, mend our relationship. But
yeah,
I think that while it made me feel less alone, it probably made them feel less alone also. Like I could have never imagined that happening to me. So, or happening to my sister and myself. So,
yeah.
it was just interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. But I'm glad that you didn't feel alone. And yes, we talked about that during the episode. Like it sucked that it had to go to that extreme. But clearly there are a lot of people who could relate to your story. And if one person felt less alone, including you, I think that means that it really did have purpose in you sharing it. Yeah. And
I agree.
part of that episode, we talked about a lot, but another part of that episode we discussed was how you were pregnant during the kind of like tumultuous season during the pandemic of your relationship with your sister. And so, you're more than, her sister, you're more than that experience. You're also a mom. And during that episode, we talked about how you were actually a single mom by choice. And that may be like a unique identifier for people. It's not something that's like super popular unless you're in that community of parenting, or, you're looking to conceive in very unique or more medically intervene ways. And so I first want to kind of just inform listeners and watchers like what a single mom by choice is. Like, how
Okay.
would you define that? If no one knows what you're talking about, they're like, what? What is that? How would you describe it?
So I had never heard of the term either, even though I knew that's what I wanted to be. So I think the best, like a one liner to describe it, is a single mom on purpose. And
Mm,
that's what I would Google. Before I found the community of single moms by choice, that's what
yeah.
I was Googling, like single moms on purpose. Like, do people do this? How do people
Uh-huh.
do this?
Yeah.
Where's the community?
Yeah.
Single mom
I
on
like
purpose.
Okay, so I like that because historically, especially in the Black community, there's this assumption that if you're a single mom, it's not on purpose.
Yeah.
It's a result of maybe a ended relationship, divorce, or maybe you and your partner are no longer together.
Some
Now
type of
you're
abandonment.
some type of abandonment, or
Mhm.
even, it could be through some type of, trauma, unexpected or unplanned pregnancy. And so there's this assumption that it's never something that people do on purpose. A lot of people may connect it also to kind of just the Black experience as a collective of, the Black father being taken out of the home. So they
Mhm.
place this whole entire,
Narrative.
weight and narrative on what it means to be a single mom, right? And so it hasn't always been seen in a I hate to say it like in a positive light, but it hasn't been seen as something that people would do on purpose. And
Oh yeah.
so I'm curious, kind of just based on maybe what you knew, what you experienced growing up, what inspired you to be a single mom on purpose?
Yeah. So if I'm looking at my own family,
Mm-hmm.
my biological father
Mm-hmm.
did leave. So my
Mm-hmm.
parents divorced and he was no longer in the picture. And
Yeah.
personally, I feel like he did not fight hard enough to be in the picture.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had a stepfather who I feel like was not an adequate father figure. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I and growing up in the church, I feel like I often saw marriages where one or both parties were staying because that was what they were supposed to do,
Mm-hmm.
and not necessarily because that was something that was serving them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I didn't want to jump the gun or quickly choose someone to be with
Mm-hmm.
or feel locked into any type of relationship in order to
Mm-hmm.
have children.
Yeah. This makes a lot of sense. No, that makes a lot of sense. I think I can relate to that. Like my mom too, for a while was a single mom. My dad, my biological father left. Girl, he left Christmas. My first Christmas, a mess.
No.
A mess. Well, no, not my first Christmas, but my first Christmas after I turned 1. So my second Christmas. But and it's like kind of almost it was almost like the norm in my maternal side of the family for the women to be single moms. At one point, all of my aunts were single moms.
Wow.
At one point, my grandmother was raising my aunts and uncles as a single mom. And even as an immigrant, like that was just kind of what we saw within the lineage. And so that's another reason why sometimes it's seen with that stigma because people place a negative connotation or they place this kind of like preconceived narrative, almost like it's an archetype to be a single mom, right? Because then it means like, oh, you're super strong and you're the mama and the daddy, and there's some sort of like bitterness that's there
Hmm.
because you're the single mom,
Yeah.
right? And so that's kind of how what I grew up in. Now, granted, not everyone was bitter, but there was still that kind of narrative of like, you don't have the men in your life anymore. And so y'all have to do everything yourselves and look at what
Right.
that's done to you. And
Hmm.
so you also mentioned like the church too and how you were kind of raised. I think we were raised in similar spaces where there was this culture where, it was like you date, you get married, and you have kids. Like there was no other variation of this life
No.
path. That's all you had. And so there was almost like there was no choice to even get a divorce. Like I
Yeah.
remember when my mom got a divorce, it was like shunned. People were like, you
Hmm.
can't remarry because you're still technically married to your husband's spiritual girl. Hot mess. Anyway,
You know, it's
Go
you know
ahead.
it's interesting
Uh-huh.
now that we're talking about church. I don't want you to lose your
Uh-huh.
train of thought though.
Go ahead.
Okay. I actually reached out to my pastor at the time to
Uh-huh.
ask like does this seem like something that would be acceptable? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to kind of piggyback off of my experiences with men,
Mm-hmm.
he offered to give me a baby, to have a baby with me.
I'm sorry. What?
And so it's just like, okay, my decision is like locked in. Yeah.
He propositioned to say,
Hmm.
so that you don't have to do it by yourself, I'll have a baby
Well,
with
he
you.
wasn't even saying so that I don't have to do it by myself. He was like, I mean, it was a joke,
Okay.
but
Okay.
I don't know if you would joke with one of your what
With
is
one of
it?
your parishioners.
Parishioners, yeah.
Yeah.
I pretty much just like told him what I was interested in. He was like, I
Hmm.
would give you a baby.
Wow.
And I'm like,
That's
okay.
fun. Even him joking about that is so interesting
It's a joke
because
until I don't laugh. And I'm like, okay.
I was just
That's
about to
okay.
say, because when it really happens is when
Okay.
another stigma or shaming happens.
Hmm.
And that's a part of what I'm curious about with you of like when you first started to talk about, or I don't know if you were like, talking to your friends and going around being like, this is a choice, I'm about to do this, here's my journey. I know you documented it, but that was not until after or once you reached like, you were like 8 or 9 months. And so, what was the reception of like the people in your life once you shared with them, like, all right, I'm ready to be a single mom on purpose?
So what's funny is I remember not really starting to look into it. I started thinking about it, jokingly talking about it, probably when I was like 26. And
Mm-hmm.
so my friends and I would go on sperm bank websites and just look at
Mm-hmm.
donors, and it would just be something like, what about him? What about him? Like just
Yeah.
fun, and then I would put my phone down and not think about it for a few more months. But it would always
Wow.
come back. And so
Okay.
I'm like a huge sign person. Like this is a
Mm-hmm.
sign. So I was working for Amazon. I was working in one of the huge fulfillment centers, and typically you see something on the ground, you pick it up. Like random stuff, you pick it up. You don't want it just like sitting around. So
Yeah.
I saw something in the warehouse and I picked it up, and it was a sperm and an egg keychain, and it said like cryo on it. And I'm like,
Hmm.
I'm done. Like, okay,
That's
for
it.
me. But so I would tell my friends about it, and no one really batted an eye. Like they were like, okay, Zan, okay. Um, and I didn't really tell my family because my family doesn't consult me about their decisions. So why would I consult them about mine? I told my mom, and
Okay.
that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
Um, Somehow, and you know how the area that we are from, because we're from the same
Mhm.
area,
Mhm.
is fairly small. So
Mhm.
somehow it did get back to my sister,
Mhm.
and she had negative comments. So it did get around somehow. I don't know who put all that information out there.
Right,
Um,
right.
and so she's probably the only person that has had anything truly negative to say to my face.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and she called me a dirty hoe for using sperm off the internet. But
Girl.
it's really
Mm,
interesting because I know for a fact that my kids are not sickle cell carriers. I know that
mm.
they actually don't have they're not carriers for any genetic disorders because not and neither is my donor. I
So,
know,
because you did your research.
yeah, they give all of this information.
Yeah.
And so I almost would venture to say I know more about my donor than I know about even like ex-boyfriends. So,
Yeah.
I
Wow.
mean,
Okay, so that's a good point. How did you go about choosing your donor? Because, like you just said, I didn't know
girl.
this, but you were younger, like in your 20s, like for fun, kind of
Mhm.
perusing, sperm banks, like a dating app, you
Mhm.
know? And then once you saw that sign, you were like, well, kind of always been thinking about this. So this is almost like confirmation to go
Yeah.
ahead and pursue it. So like, how did you go about choosing your donor? What was that
Okay,
process like?
so when I saw that keychain, I was
Mhm.
probably still like in my late 20s because
Mhm.
that was maybe like 2018, 2019. I think
Okay.
I turned 30 in 2019, and I told myself if at 30 I'm not in a serious relationship,
Mhm.
then I'm gonna use a donor. And I
Yeah.
actually made a pact with someone:
Mhm.
when I turn 30, or when we turn 30, we'll go half on a baby.
Yeah.
And he fell through. But so what was I saying? Oh,
How'd
so
you go about?
how do I choose my donor? So
Mhm.
I was never a huge math person. So I knew
Yeah.
that I wanted him to be very smart, like good
Mhm.
at math.
Mhm.
I prioritized Black donors. I wanted to be able
Mhm.
to identify with my kids' experiences
Mhm.
and vice versa. Like, I did not want them to look around and not feel, I guess, not
Like seen or
accepted, but
belonged.
yeah, like
Mhm.
a sense of belonging. I wanted them to have a sense of belonging because their um upbringing, their journey of how they got here was already going to be different. So I
Yeah.
wanted for
Yeah.
sure for them to have a sense of belonging. So that was
Mhm.
a priority. Black,
Mhm.
I have like some height requirements, but
Yes, that's
other than
okay.
that, I think the main thing was like um math and like
Yeah.
smart. I really wanted him to be smart. And when you go on sperm donor websites or cryobanks, a lot of
Mhm.
times you will have to sign a waiver if they have certain genetic, or if they have any genetic disorders. You have to sign a waiver saying that you understand and you're okay with that. So that was
Mhm.
a deal breaker for me. If I had to sign a waiver, then they were out of the running.
Yeah.
So no genetic disorders. He had to be
Okay.
smart,
Okay.
kind of like a height requirement.
Mhm.
um, yeah, I think that was pretty much it.
You know what though? So okay, so this process, it reminds me of, I don't know if you saw that in social media when Debrat and her wife Judy were trying to conceive and they were looking for sperm donors. And they made the comment of how, well, it was like a controversial comment they made at first about the few Black men or Black donors that they saw on the site that they were browsing. And they made a comment after something, it went viral or whatever, it was controversial. They made a comment after saying like, well, a lot of people don't know that within the cryobanks or sperm donors, it's very hard to find a Black male, you know, for that very reason, like you said, so that your child can maybe look like you or have a sense of belonging because they already have other things that make them different and unique. And so, would you say that it was, with your requirements and your donor being Black being one of them, would you say that it was hard for you to find an adequate Black donor?
So, I made the like hardcore decision, like 100%. This is what I'm doing in February of 2020, and I found my donor in March. Um,
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
So I didn't have that experience, but I know that they're not
Mhm.
lying. I know that a lot of women have that same experience.
Yeah.
But I'll also say that it oftentimes has stuff to do with how many pictures are available. Now I'm an FBI agent, so I found my donor in real life. I found
Yeah.
everything. So
Okay.
I know what he looks like today. I know what he looked like as a baby. I know what his parents look like.
Yeah.
Like, and a lot of times
You
even
got the
people will
history.
okay. Um,
Mhm.
people will say like, "How do you know they didn't lie?" I know my donor didn't lie. Like,
Mhm.
I know where he went to undergrad. I know where he went to grad school. Like,
I know that's
everything
right.
matches up.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of people do have that experience, and I think a lot of women also feel like they have to defend
Mm.
that they didn't use a Black donor. I think that if you're secure in your decision, then it shouldn't
You
matter.
shouldn't have to. Yeah, it doesn't
Yeah,
matter. That was your decision to have a child in the first place. Why would you even try to defend what type of donor you decided to use?
right.
Yeah. So, and it's funny you said it earlier. You know more about your donor than you know about your ex boyfriends. And I
Mhm.
feel like this process, what I'm hearing is it really, not only did it give you the choice to be a mom, to parent in general, but it gave you the choice of who you decided to procreate with.
Mhm,
Like their choice, they already did their choice because they decided to donate the sperm,
mhm,
right? So you were able to make a very well informed choice. Like
right,
it's very rare that before you get married or before you try to start having kids, you're asking your partner, okay, is there a history of genetic diseases? You know, what, I mean, you might know if they went to college or not or how smart they were, but like you said, people can lie, like they can fabricate their life story. You know, they may not even know if there's
right.
any, sickle cell traits that they carry. They may not know if there's any genetic disorder,
Mhm.
genes that they carry. And so this gave you the opportunity to make a very well informed decision. And so you started looking seriously in February of 2020. March, you found them. What was the process like after that to like start
Well,
to inseminate?
well,
Oh, go ahead.
let me go back a little bit. So, I had a donor in my favorites in February.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and being a little bit shallow, he just stayed in my favorites because there was something I didn't like about him.
Okay. Oh, that's
Um, it was
okay. Again,
it was a
choice.
speech impediment, and I wasn't sure if the
Okay.
speech impediment would be passed on. So,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
as an adult, he had the speech impediment, so I was not
Okay.
sure if that would be passed on. So he stayed in my favorites, and one day I just said, I'm going to look again because I had had my consultation in February with my IVF doctor,
Mhm.
and I needed to choose a donor soon. So I said one day I just logged in. I was like, oh my gosh, he's so cute. He's so cute. And it was only
Mhm.
childhood pictures. Um,
Yeah.
and I screenshot and I sent it to my mom. I'm like, what do you think? There's no waiver. There, like, it's like he's
This
perfect.
is
Like, this is the
perfect.
one.
Little
Yeah.
unicorn. Uh-huh.
Right. He's black. So I called the sperm bank and
Uh-huh.
I asked them how many vials were available because it just said low vials. And they said
Mhm.
he had 8 vials left. And I'm like, okay. And a lot of times they have like 20 vials,
I was gonna
30
say, what's the
vials.
average?
Yeah,
Okay.
so they can have a lot of vials. So I'm like, I'll just call back tomorrow if I choose to go with this donor. She said, I
Okay.
wouldn't suggest that. I would suggest you at least put a couple on hold for 24 hours. You can put them on hold for 24 hours. So I put 2 on hold for 24 hours.
Mhm.
I just thought about it the next day. I called
Yeah.
back and I purchased them.
Yeah.
And when I called back, no more vials were left. So he was like sold out within that time frame.
Oh, so
Um,
she really looked out by telling you to put
right.
those
I need
on
to send her some
hold.
baby pictures.
Okay.
uh, so I purchased the vials, and I'll even talk about pricing. So at the time, the vials were about
That's
the
expensive.
vials.
And so really quick tangent or like really quick pinpoint, did your insurance cover this?
Actually, the insurance that I had with my previous job covered everything. So there's a
Wow.
benefit. Excuse me. So there's a benefit called progeny, and
Uh-huh.
progeny will. When I say progeny is the industry standard or needs to be the industry standard when it comes to fertility coverage. So they
Okay.
have what's called smart cycles. And
Mhm.
with those smart cycles, so like a quarter of a smart cycle, I believe I had 2 smart cycles available. So like a quarter of a smart cycle
Mhm.
will cover sperm. So I have to pay out of pocket, they reimburse me. Then a quarter
Okay.
of the smart cycle is the egg retrieval and creating embryos. And then another
Mhm.
quarter of the smart cycle is an embryo transfer.
Mhm.
So, and then I think maybe, I believe I used one full smart cycle. So somehow I
Yeah, I
used
was gonna say you
a
had like
full,
eight.
yeah,
You had 8 quarters of
right.
basically cycles to do each of the
Yes.
steps. Okay.
Yes. And so I used one full smart cycle, and they won't tell you no more until you bring a baby home. So even if you keep going, it's pretty much if you bring a baby home the first time, you still only have one smart cycle left. So if you
Mhm.
don't bring a baby home and you use 2 smart cycles and that's all you have, I believe they will continue until you bring at least one baby.
Wow.
And they will help with
What?
surrogacy. Yeah. When I say it's the bomb, Stop it.
Is that through a specific insurance carrier, like Anthem, Aetna, Cigna, or
It's
is
called
that through?
progeny.
It's
It's
just
just
something that
yeah.
your
So
job offered as a benefit.
yes. So at the time,
Wow.
I had Aetna as my regular health insurance,
Mm-hmm.
and progeny was a benefit on top of that.
Okay.
So
Okay.
same-sex couples, single parents, anyone can use them.
Yeah.
You can use it to freeze eggs, create embryos, full IVF, everything. IUIs, ICIs, all of it.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're listening and already your head is spinning, this is something to consider if you are looking to try to conceive, and not in like the natural spontaneous way, but with like intervention. Your benefits matter
Mm.
because like what you just said, it's expensive. One vial was $900. That is, and
And
in one
today,
vial, yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No. Go ahead, please.
I was just gonna say, is one vial enough for you to have like however many embryos you need to go through a full like cycle of IVF or IUI?
So for IVF, most likely.
Okay.
For IUIs, you use at least one vial per IUI, and then you can only do 1 to 2 IUIs a month. So sometimes you'll do one IUI during your what is it, fertile window, and
Yeah.
then sometimes you can do 2 IUIs in that fertile window. But each
Okay.
IUI uses one vial of sperm. And so I did what's called ICSI with my IVF. And so my embryologist actually pulled out each individual sperm and put them into an egg. So she chose, yeah. So
Oh
I only
wow.
used 29 sperm, and I believe it was like 30 million or so, I don't know, something like that.
Yeah. I'm about to say it has to be millions in there.
Oh yeah. And that's what I was
That
going to
is
say.
so
So
specific.
Sloane's brother,
Mhm.
like through my donor, his mom contacted me the other day and said that she was looking on the website about buying another vial,
Mhm.
and they're now $2,000.
The same donor?
The same donor, the same vial of sperm that's been sitting there for I don't know how many years. two
Because
thousand
clearly he's a
dollars.
hot commodity. It's a demand supply.
Yeah.
Well, also
Well, I think it's just inflation.
inflation. Yeah, I'm
It,
gonna say
it,
inflation. Wow. Okay, so your doctor, she chose 29 sperm, and you had 29. I'm assuming 29 eggs
yes,
that she was able to, what's the word
extract.
I'm looking for? Extract. Yes, and
Yes,
then fertilize and create
yes.
embryos. So did you have 29 embryos?
So actually, I'll go through like each step. So when you do
Okay, go
IVF,
ahead.
like the IVF
Mhm.
people want to hear
Mhm.
all the little things. So I'll say it like
Mhm.
that. So
Okay.
when I did my stimulation drugs, so I
Uh-huh.
have what's called polycystic ovaries. I
Okay.
do not have PCOS, the syndrome.
Right.
So part of PCOS is polycystic ovaries. So you have a
Mhm.
lot of follicles in your ovaries, but you
Mhm.
also have high testosterone or like male hormones.
Okay.
So is she too loud?
Mm.
Okay.
I mean, I can hear
Um,
her, but it's not like
okay.
it's not overwhelmingly loud. Yeah.
Okay. So when I like I said, I have PCOS or sorry, I have PCO, polycystic ovaries. So I
Mhm.
just create a lot of follicles, which means I create a lot of eggs. So
Okay.
on my quiet ultrasound, and a quiet ultrasound is when you have an ultrasound when your ovaries are not stimulated.
Okay.
I had 14 on one side and 10 on the other side. Typically people have
Wow.
like 4 on one side and
Oh yeah, you
around
were
around
producing
that
an
number.
abundance.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So we started stimulating my ovaries, and by
Mhm.
the time you stimulate for about 14 days. So by the time it
Mhm.
was time for my egg retrieval, I had almost 40 follicles between
Wow.
both ovaries. Right.
Is
And
this
you
rare
can
or like unheard
oh
of?
yeah. I did not realize how rare it was. It was my first
Wow.
time doing IVF. It was 2020. Like I'm not talking to anyone. I
Mhm.
don't know anyone else who's done IVF. So I didn't know how rare it was. My nurses would be like, "Do you see all
Girl.
these dots?" And I'm like,
Mhm.
what does that mean?
Yes. I see them.
Okay. So, and I think that my doctor was was a little nervous that they wouldn't all be of good quality because there were so many. And so, she was doing what she could to make sure I got as many as I could. So, like I said, I had almost 40 when I went in for my egg retrieval. I came out, I woke up, my doctor's standing there. She's like, we got 29 eggs. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And again, a lot
Wow.
of times, if someone told you they had 14 eggs, people would be
Yeah.
like, good job. You did a good job.
Yeah.
So 29, it's like, okay.
You're a superstar. Uh-huh.
Right. So then they went into embryology, and the embryologist did ICSI and put one healthy sperm into each egg. And they
Okay.
have to, I don't know if the correct term is culture, but they have to like grow for the next 5 days. Once they reach 5 days and they've grown healthily for those 5 days, then they're considered a 5-day embryo. And so
Mm-hmm.
at 5 days, I had, so I had 29 eggs, 24 fertilized. So even if you
Mm-hmm.
put the sperm in the egg, it may not
It's not
fertilize.
guaranteed. Okay.
Right. So 24 fertilized.
Mm-hmm.
By day 5, I had 18 embryos.
Mm-hmm.
So keep having a little bit of attrition. Typically, you have
Yeah.
about 50% attrition overall. So, and I
Yeah.
fell right around there.
Right
And so
around there. Yeah.
then we sent them off to have PGS testing. And so PGS testing will test for chromosomal abnormalities such as
Mm-hmm.
Down syndrome. I can't really think, or
Other,
I
yeah.
think Turner syndrome might be one of them.
Okay.
And so from the 18, 3 had chromosomal abnormalities, and they actually sent me a
Wow.
report. And from the
Uh-huh.
report, I could look, like I Googled, like, oh, if this chromosome is abnormal or missing or whatever, what that
Yeah.
child would turn out to like, what kind of life expectancy they would have. And some of them would have no limbs or not grow like a complete brain, like stuff like that. So 3 of them had chromosomal abnormalities. And I had
Okay.
15 PGS normal embryos, 8 boys, 7 girls.
Wow. Oh my goodness. That's like I feel like that's like a dream. Like that's an ideal like success story from that IVF process. Because like you said, 40 follicles,
Mm-hmm.
29 eggs, 24 fertilized, and then what you say, 18
18.
embryos, and then
Mm-hmm.
only 3 had any genetic abnormality. So you had 15 embryos that you could basically decide if you want to have 15 kids, you got 15 kids.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And so I would say it is a dream until you really have to sit and think. So I never thought I would have to make a decision about what I would do with where am I, 13 more embryos, because I had 2
Mhm.
of them. I never thought I would have to make that decision. I thought it might have been one, or actually I never thought about having more embryos than I had children. Like I never thought about
Yeah.
that. Just sleep, babe. Um And so now it's very difficult because people will ask me for my embryos. People will suggest that I should donate
Wow.
them. And then with this Alabama ruling, there's no
Girl.
telling what's going to happen with embryos. So
Yeah.
it's a dream in that, you know, you had success in IVF, but then it's also a slight nightmare because
Mm,
you have to make decisions for 13 embryos.
that's so true. Well, I hope while you're thinking about and having to kind of sit with your decisions, you feel supported, which kind of brings me to the next point of like, so once what was the process of like when you decided to implant any of the embryos and then go on your pregnancy journey?
Yeah. So I did IVF again in the middle of 2020. I
Mhm.
had my embryo transfer July of 2020, and I did everything. I didn't tell, the only person that truly knew anything were like my closest friends
Yeah.
and my mom. So no one
Yeah.
at work knew anything. I was like waddling around because I had 40 eggs. And you know that you're told you cannot like run or jump with that many eggs because it's almost like they're like grapes on like a
Uh-huh.
twist. They can twist and like it's painful.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful. So I did all of that
Okay.
without really telling anyone. I
Mm-hmm.
transferred and I did not show much in my pregnancy. So again, at work, I didn't really say anything. I think I might have told them when I was like 6 months pregnant,
Wow.
and they had great maternity leave. So
Yeah.
I went on maternity leave within like a month or two of telling them I was pregnant.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
I know, right? um, and I don't know. I feel like that pregnancy was very stress free. No one
Your first
talked to
one. Mhm.
you. It was 2020. No one talked to you in stores. Like you just went grocery shopping. No one attempted to touch you. It was just easy, you know?
Peaceful.
Um,
Yeah.
and I really didn't tell anyone, even in my family, that I was pregnant until I gave birth. I asked my grandfather um, how he felt about me giving Sloan his
Mm-hmm.
mother's maiden name. And so he probably was like the only one of like extended family that I told about my pregnancy.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So, a lot of people would think, single mom by choice, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Stereotypically, like the pregnancy journey, having a partner there is like very helpful because, it could be tough for some people. It can be very easeful for others. And so there's this like, I think you see it on TikTok, you see it on Instagram. There's this narrative around you need someone with you to support you during your pregnancy journey as you're going through the trimesters. And so for you, what did that support or village look like while you were preparing to be a mom?
With my first pregnancy,
Mm-hmm.
I was working hard, like
Yeah.
working probably 15 hours a day.
Oh,
I could
wow.
probably work 50 to 60 hours a week in a 4-day work week. Um, and
In
so
a
I,
4-day work week,
oh yeah, I
girl,
was working for
what?
Amazon. I was working for Amazon. So they're
Oh,
like
yeah.
on
That's
you. You
my
know what I
fault.
mean? Okay. I was,
Me
I
and my
was,
prime.
I was doing, at this time I had moved to grocery delivery. So I was
Hmm.
managing like a grocery delivery site. Um,
Okay.
but they were long hours.
Oh, a
So
lot.
when
Yeah.
I was off, I rested and that was it.
Mhm.
I think more so with this pregnancy, I felt like I needed more support. Um, things were just very different. I thought they would be the same. Like I had food aversions with both, but this time it was way worse. I
Mhm.
never threw up in my previous pregnancy. This pregnancy, it was like if I if I laughed too hard, I could throw up. Yeah,
Oh my goodness.
it was intense. Um, and so in this pregnancy, my mom was living with us and
Mhm.
was able to be more of a support person for me. In my previous
Yeah.
pregnancy, I just lived by myself, and I think I like being by myself. Like I enjoy
Mhm.
it. So I personally didn't feel like I was missing anything
Mhm.
when I was going through all of these like milestones by myself. I have had people reach out to me and ask me, um, how did I handle not having anyone to go get the cravings in
Ice
the
cream
middle
in the
of the
middle of the
night?
night.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I just went and got it myself. Or
Yeah.
I
Or
mean,
Uber Eats.
yeah, it's not something that I feel like I had to adjust to. Because I
Mhm.
never in my head, I've never experienced a man be that for me. So it was not like I was missing that role.
Anything.
Yeah, no, I wasn't
They
missing
say you
anything.
can't miss what you've never had.
No. Mm,
That makes so much sense. So for you, the journey, your previous pregnancy, the journey was like a norm almost for you. You were still working hard, you were by
mhm,
yourself, which you enjoyed.
mhm.
You weren't looking for anyone to kind of run out and get the cravings or go with you to these appointments. Like it was very, from what I'm hearing, it was very like not easy, but easeful maybe,
It just felt normal. And I'll
normal.
even
Yeah,
say it was 2020, it was 2021. No one's husband could go to the appointments. I was not
that's true.
nothing
So
was
you weren't even
different.
alone in that.
Nope.
Yeah.
I was sitting in those waiting rooms by myself, just like every other woman
All
in
the other
there.
women.
Yeah.
Okay, so that makes a lot of
And
sense.
maybe that helped me, and I don't even
Yeah.
know that it helped me. Um,
Mhm.
but even now, I had a very different pregnancy. I kind of had a wild pregnancy. I don't know if you know
Okay.
what that means, but
Mm-mm.
so a wild pregnancy is where you don't see a provider. I did have a
Okay.
midwife that supported me in my pregnancy, but I
Mhm.
was not in doctors' offices, so I
Okay.
still did not experience that like lack of, I guess, companionship or something
Yeah,
in those waiting rooms. Um, so yeah, no,
because
I
you weren't in any waiting
personally, yeah,
room.
right,
Yeah.
right,
Okay. Okay, so wild pregnancy. So kind of like pregnancy in the wild. Like
yeah.
there's no. Yeah. Okay. So not missing out. You feel like you're with your most recent pregnancy, mom was there to support, the
Mhm.
friends that you talked to were very much like, girl, this is right up your alley.
Right.
Grandfather was supportive. And so the feedback or like any pushback that you received, it was through like your sister, or once you started to document and share your journey? Because I think, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that your journey is very unique still because you're a Black woman who's going through this journey, right? And so the fact that you chose to document and share your journey, one, I think was really a blessing to so many women in general who were going through IVF. Because from what I've seen, on your platforms, you're so detailed, you're very transparent, and you're very open to answering questions that people have. And so, through your transparency and through your vulnerability, what was your online journey like once you let people know this is how I came to motherhood?
So initially, I mean, I didn't have much of a following, especially on YouTube, is where I would post majority of my content then, and I would
Hmm.
get someone here and there saying like, "Oh, children need a two-parent household," and
Mm,
talking about how I should have had or created a nuclear family for my children and stuff like that. Not again, not until my page really blew up more recently have has it been more overwhelming that people are saying that.
yeah.
But even more than the negatives, people are saying, "I'm so glad I found your page because now I know that this is something that Black
Hmm.
women do." And I'm like,
Yeah.
if you are a Black woman and you do it, it's something that Black women do. So if you never see a Black woman do it,
Yeah.
and then you do
Period.
it, guess what? Black women do it. And
It's something that Black
it's
women do.
always, oh yeah, it's always so interesting to me because, and I say this all the time, people always want to say Black is not a monolith and we're not monolithic, et cetera, et cetera. But as
Mm,
soon as someone does something that's different, it's Black people don't do that. You know what I mean? So like,
yeah.
which one is it?
Yeah.
Which one is it?
That's a good point. That's a good point. I think people, it's like we're not a monolith, but people are very hesitant to accept something that is different, you know? And I think and that's not a justification at all for anyone's comments that were definitely rude or out of place. But it makes sense if someone was to feel like we don't do this. It's not that we don't do it, it's that it's different and you may not have seen it done before,
Right.
right? And so I'm also curious, like, okay, so you said your first pregnancy, your previous one was easeful. You were able to go through it in the pandemic, so you weren't really missing out on anyone coming into the appointments with you because no one had that. But the most recent pregnancy was like a pregnancy in the wild. So you didn't really were under the care, going to doctor's offices all the time. You had your midwife. What would you say are the differences or similarities between your birthing experiences? Because I've seen a little bit of your labor and delivery experiences online, but listeners or watchers of the podcast may have no clue what that was like for you after your journey or your choice to become a single mom. Yeah.
Okay, so I free birthed both of my daughters, and free birthing is just having a home birth or a birth outside of the hospital,
Hmm.
but also not having any medical professional present for that birth.
Hmm.
So, um, with my first birth with Sloan, I was so excited to meet her. Like, I
Yeah.
couldn't wait. I took what's called midwife's brew, and so it has castor oil in it. It's a little
Ugh.
controversial.
Ugh.
And so I took midwife's brew at like 9 p.m. on one night.
Mhm.
The next morning by like 8 a.m. I was having contractions, and I gave birth
Wow.
at 12:53, I believe, the next
Okay.
day. So I was in
Yes.
labor for 17 hours.
For a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Okay.
I specifically remember so I asked every pregnant woman that would talk to me about birth and had an unmedicated birth. Well, mainly like no epidural, because I wanted to know like what the feeling was like, So asked everyone, what's worse, contractions or the baby coming out? Because on movies, they're screaming their head off when that baby's coming out, okay?
Yeah.
Like they're screaming
Yeah.
during contractions, but when that baby is coming out, they're like
It sounds like it is.
popping, screaming their head off, okay? So
Oh God.
a vast majority said that the worst part is the contractions. And so I'm like, okay, I think I could get through the contractions. I really think I could get through the contractions. And then I would ask, and what makes a contraction so bad? And they would say, they don't stop. Like they just keep coming, they keep coming, they keep coming. And so, people would talk about the ring of fire, etc. when the baby's head comes out. When I gave birth to Sloan, it was just me and my mom, and I didn't want any pressure when the head came out, like push or anything like that. So I didn't tell my mom that Sloan's head was coming out. So she's standing right in front of me. The head is coming out, and then I tell her the head is out. So that's how calm it was, okay?
Wow.
Telling her, like, the head's out. She's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yes, the head's out. And so she looks down, and she's like, the head's out. And I'm like, I know, the head's out.
I just fixed it.
I know. And so I wasn't sure if her mouth was out. So I gave like the tiniest push, and her body just like flew out. Like after the head,
It's
for
like
me,
slid.
it's almost
Oh my gosh.
out. You're out of there,
Wow.
With Sidra, I was pretty much in labor for a week. I don't know. Did you follow that? Did you follow
that? I remember. I feel like I followed it, but not as closely to know. Like, oh, it's been 6 days now.
Yes. So Friday the 19th, I woke up and I was so hungry. I went downstairs, got something to eat. I'm like, I'm just gonna sit on the couch and eat this. Before I go back upstairs, because I didn't want to wake Sloan up. Let's be quiet, babe. I didn't want to wake Sloan up, so I sat on the couch and I felt something coming out, like liquid, not a head.
Oh, like your water broke?
Yes, liquid. Yes, but in pregnancy, you often have like a lot of discharge. So I was like, I'm not dealing with it right now. I'm eating. When I go upstairs, I would change my underwear and I would put like a panty liner or something on. And then it kept coming and kept coming and kept coming. I'm like, this is a lot of discharge. Like, this is not normal. So I started walking up the stairs to go to the bathroom, and it's like dripping down my leg. So I'm like, okay, this is not normal. This is not discharge. And a little trick that people do is they smell it. If it smells a little bit like bleach, then you know that it's amniotic fluid, that you're like, it's your water breath.
Good to know. Okay.
So I smelled it and it smelled like bleach. So I had purchased Depends to wear during labor and after birth. And so I put one of those on, I went to sleep. And I'm like, I already know by the time I wake up, I'm going to be in labor. I'm going to have this baby. But I didn't want a Capricorn. I wanted an Aquarius so bad. So, can you please stop? So, as excited as I was like, stay in there until
hold her in.
Stay in there until Aquarius season. So
which was when? When is Aquarius season?
I don't know, but I wanted her to come on 2/4/24. So, and
Okay.
I was due
Oh,
on January like 30th or 31st or something like that. So I'm like,
okay.
you need to stay
Oh,
in
this
there.
the
I'm gonna sew.
19th right now.
Right, I'm gonna sew myself
Dang.
up. Like, you have to stay in there. And so for like the next week,
Mm-hmm.
leaking fluids, I would have days where I would have 2 hours of contractions, 3 minutes apart,
Oh my God.
and stop. And they're Braxton Hicks. And after
Right.
having 2 labors, I know for myself, Braxton Hicks are always in my stomach. When I'm in labor and I'm having true contractions, with
Mm-hmm.
Sloan, they were in my lower back. I never felt anything in
Mm-hmm.
my stomach. And with
Mm-hmm.
Sidra, they were, I could literally feel it directly in my cervix, almost like someone was
Wow.
opening my cervix. So, like I said, with myself or with my previous labor, it was all in my back. With this labor, it was directly in my cervix. But over that week, it was in my stomach. So I almost knew this is maybe not the real thing, but it would keep
Yeah.
happening. Every few days, I would have hours of contractions. I would go walking 2 miles and nothing would happen.
Girl.
Uh, and so the 19th, my water kind of broke. And it was probably like just a
Mm-hmm.
little tiny tear up top. And so it's just
Mm-hmm.
trickling out, trickling out. I
Mm-hmm.
did not go to my chiropractor. I was supposed to go to my chiropractor that day. I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I'm not going to my chiropractor because she's going to make me go into labor and I'm going to have a Capricorn.
Oh yeah. She's
So,
gonna push that baby out.
okay. So, by the next week, I had not gone into like true labor. And this is called like prodromal labor. So it's a long,
Okay.
drawn out labor. But typically, when you go into true labor after prodromal labor, it's very quick.
Mm-hmm.
So I was okay with that because I'm
Okay.
like, at least it's not going to be a 17-hour, like, intense
Yeah,
labor.
because by the time she gets here, it's gonna be 5 minutes.
So, right. So the next week, I went to my chiropractor and I said, put the mojo on me, get this baby out of me. I couldn't take it. It was like contractions every other day. I couldn't take it. So I think on
Yeah.
Wednesday, I was adjusted at my chiropractor. Friday morning, at
Mm-hmm.
3:55, I wake up and I could feel there was discharge. And so I go to the
Mm-hmm.
bathroom. I use the bathroom. When I wipe, there was like a pink tinge. So
Okay.
I'm losing the mucus plug, like cervix is opening, stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, I guess it's
It's
time. So
time.
I took a shower
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just like walking around the living room. So Sloan's again still asleep upstairs. And I kept looking at the clock because I'm like, please just give me a short labor. Please just give me a short labor. And
Yeah.
I labored for about almost 6 hours. So 5-ish hours. And she was born at
Wow.
9:42.
Okay.
And
Okay.
this child was a complete different delivery because Sloan was
Really? Okay.
quiet, but Sloan's a
Uh-huh.
fire sign. I know I'm talking about astrology a lot, but like
Mm-hmm. That's
Sloan's a
okay.
fire sign, and her birth was like so calm, and I'm like, okay, yeah, okay, And then Sidra's an Aquarius. She came Aquarius season, and
Mm-hmm.
it was like ripping and roaring like crazy. So there was an incident outside my house when this was happening. And when I went back to look at my ring, I could hear myself
Uh-huh.
like roar. Like you get this like very deep,
Yes. It's
what is
almost
it
like
called?
animalistic, like primal.
Yes, yeah, primal. That's the
Mm-hmm.
word. Like this very deep, like groaning,
Mm.
roaring sound, and I could hear it on my ring. Now I'm on the second floor of my house, and I can hear it on my ring. So
I know your neighbors are probably like, so,
they were preoccupied.
should we,
It
should we
was some
check?
crazy stuff going on outside.
Oh, Lord.
So, I remember feeling, I always describe it like, I feel like I was a straw and Sidra was a spitball and somebody like shot her out of me because there was
Mm.
no controlling it. There's something called the Ferguson reflex, or some people call it the fetal ejection reflex, where I don't know if you're aware, but if a woman is like in a coma and
Mm-hmm.
pregnant and the baby is ready to be born,
Mm-hmm.
that woman will give birth in a coma. Her body will
Wow.
birth her baby. And so that's called
Wow.
the fetal ejection reflex. And typically you'll experience it when you're in like a very safe environment,
Mm-hmm.
dim lights,
You're
Sometimes,
calm.
yeah, like sometimes people don't experience it in the hospital because bright lights, people are barging in, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought I experienced it with my first. I think I truly experienced it with my second. Um, I just felt like I had to hold on to something or I was gonna like blow away. And she was just like shooting out of me. And
Oh my gosh.
it was crazy. I have this, there's like an 8-minute video and it's crazy. And I might put it on YouTube. I need to make my
Yeah.
birth vlog, but I remember asking my mom, like, please hold my hand. Like, I just felt like I was gonna like blow away, and she just
Yeah.
came out so fast. So
Wow.
yeah, two very different births.
Very different.
I just knew I was gonna have a nice quiet birth like I did with Sloan, and it did not
Chill birth.
happen. Yeah.
Your body said, JK, watch
No.
this. Which
Mm-mm.
is so interesting though, because the woman's body is so magical. It is so
Mm.
amazing. The things that it can do. The
Yeah.
fact that your body can even just like, even if you're not psychologically conscious and
Hmm.
like participating, your body
Hmm.
can still give birth.
Yes.
That's wild to me.
Crazy.
Wow. I have never heard of that before, but now I just learned something new.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So, two very different births, and clearly so far they're two very different, kids.
Oh yeah.
But what would you say now that you're like in the thick of it, girl? You got two children. What would you say is like something that you are surprised by now in your journey of motherhood? And it could be a good surprise, like, oh my gosh, I'm tearing up, or it could be like a girl, I'm stressed surprise. Mm-hmm.
I would say I'm most surprised by how different even my postpartums are. So
Yeah.
with Sloan, anxiety was through the roof, intrusive thoughts were
Mm-hmm.
through the roof. I always thought somebody was, I mean, I still think someone's going to take Sidra because, I mean, it's
The
just the
world.
world we live in, right?
Yeah.
But for Sloan, it was like to the 10th degree, and the anxiety, it was bad. Like I was
Yeah.
crying a lot, and you sometimes have like baby blues and stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it was really intense. And this
Mm-hmm.
time around, I just felt completely normal immediately after
Wow.
giving birth.
Yeah.
Another shock would be the after pains. So
Mm-hmm.
when you nurse after you give birth, your
Mm.
uterus contracts and it helps your uterus like heal and
Kind
everything.
of shrink and go back.
Right,
Yeah.
shrink, go back to normal size. With Sloan, it was almost like how like when you have like a good workout and your muscles are like kind of sore.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, this feels nice. Like it's
Like
like
a good kind of
a
sore.
good,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. With Sidra, I nursed her, and maybe this is why also. So I nursed Sloan. She didn't nurse for out until hours after she was born.
Okay.
Sidra nursed within like an hour or two of being born,
Wow. Okay.
and my mom had run out to go get me something to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember calling her. I'm like, "You have to come back. I'm about to pass out." Like I didn't feel like I needed pain meds for the birth, and I said,
You need it for the afterbirth.
I think I took like 1,000 milligrams of Tylenol. And I
Wow.
would ask about that too when I would talk to women who
Yeah.
breastfed. How are the afterbirth pains? And some
Mm-hmm.
women would be like, "Oh, I would just clench up right when the baby latches, but then after a few minutes, it's fine." No, for
Mm-hmm.
me, it was probably for like the first week, and it would
Yeah.
last probably 30 minutes, and I would be like sweating, um, like fanning myself. It was just
Yeah.
like a
Your
lot.
vagal nerve.
Oh yeah.
Your vagus, what do they call it? Your vagus nerve, or
Vegas
like
or
a
something. Yeah,
vagal,
something. I don't know. I don't
yeah,
know.
vagal nerve response. I've had one of those before where like you feel like you're about to pass out. Girl,
Hmm.
my ears were ringing. That's how
Yes.
like
Or you get
in
like
pain
tunnel
I
vision.
was. Yes. I could not. I was like, I'm blacking out. Here I go. I had to call. This is like a side note, but that's the only like experience that I can kind of relate to it, but it's clearly not birthing pains. It had to
Hmm.
do with my abdomen. But I called my doctor's office and I was like, I just fell. This is TMI. I was like, I just fell off the toilet.
Wait, were you on the floor when you called?
I crawled to my
Oh
bedroom
no.
because I like came to and I was like, what the
Oh no.
happened? Crawled to my bedroom and I grabbed my phone and I was like, I'm
Yeah.
not calling 911.
I would
I
have
was
called
like, but let me
911.
call like the nurse. I said, let me call the nurse hotline so I can figure out what just happened to me. And she was like, it's a vagus nerve. Your vagus nerve is basically like when you're in pain,
Mhm.
all of the attention, like your body forces all of the resources
Mhm.
to that spot. And
That's
everything
interesting.
else is just like,
But that's
we're
so
out left out
interesting
here
to
to
me.
hang.
Right. We'll get back to y'all when we can. But it's so interesting
Yeah.
to me because for birth, people say like that's the most pain a woman will feel. That didn't happen. But
Mm.
nursing after, that's what I
Wow.
experienced. So,
I wonder though too how I mean it's clearly physiological, but I wonder how much of it is psychological too. You know, like it's like you said, you kind of were prepared in a sense for the birth, like the labor and delivery process of the birth. You had no preparation for that level of the afterbirth pain. And so your psyche was probably like, hold on. This is an
what's
emergency.
happening?
We have never experienced this before.
Mayday, mayday.
Mayday, SOS somebody.
No,
Oh
for
my
real.
gosh. I'm glad your mom was there though, because that had to have been scary too. If
Oh
you
yeah.
for like
I would have
legit
definitely
feel
had
like
a
you're gonna
doula.
pass out.
I think next time if I
Yes.
have another one, I'll probably have a doula just because I feel like my mom should be able to like rest and experience this also. And so when she's the
Okay.
support person, she's more
Yeah.
like working and not
Mm-hmm.
enjoying, I think. I don't
Yeah.
know for sure. But maybe to cook and to clean and stuff like that, I would hire like a postpartum
Like a
doula.
doula. That's a good point. That's a good point. Okay. So if there was someone out here who was like, you know what? I'm thinking about being a single mom on purpose or being a single mom by choice.
Mhm.
What's like one word of advice you would give them in preparation for this journey? And not just like the conception, pregnancy, labor, delivery journey, but just motherhood in general.
I was gonna say that actually. I was gonna say
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the advice I would give for starting their SMBC journey would be the same advice I would give um for just being a mother. And I think I was talking to someone recently. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like you, one, it's your choice. Like just do what you want to
Yes.
do. But two, you now are like the advocate for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So a friend of mine just gave birth and her baby was in the NICU, but her baby was full term. And so they were telling her not so legitimate reasons why the baby needed to stay in the NICU. And I told her, that's not making sense. You need to question everything they're telling you. And
Yeah.
she told me the minute she started questioning them, they started drawing up the discharge papers. So it's like, and her baby was in the
Oh,
NICU for
wow.
10 days. She went home without her baby. When I tell you postpartum is hard, it's even harder when you don't bring your own baby home. So,
Oh gosh.
so it's like you need the minute you like you're an advocate. It doesn't matter whether you
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be an advocate or not. You're advocating for
You are
yourself
now.
and you're advocating
Mm-hmm.
for someone else. So
And
just
I feel like
put that
that's
hat on.
so important. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they talk about it a lot now because the awareness for maternal health and
Mm-hmm.
specifically Black maternal health has increased exponentially. And so they do talk about like advocating or having, like you said, a doula, having someone there, like a partner, family member support system to advocate for you. But I like how you're emphasizing like, you don't stop being an advocate. Like you're going to be your own advocate during your journey and
Mm-hmm.
after, but now you're
Mm-hmm.
even the advocate for another human being. And so I love that word of advice. So if you're listening and you're like, I'm considering it, but I don't know what this is going to look like,
Mm-hmm.
ask yourself if you are ready to be an advocate
At all
for
times.
someone else at all times. Like you're going to be the advocate in the hospital. You're going to be that mama up at the school, at the daycare.
Exactly.
You're going to
Exactly.
advocate for them in public and in private, even, and have their best interests at the forefront at all times. That's what it is. Wow. So Thank you, first of all, because we went from beginning, like when you even just before, your children were even like a legit thought or like you were able to fathom them to two of them being here now. So I do appreciate you sharing your story so transparently. And I think that that is just kind of like that's your, I don't want to say brand, but that's just like the energy you've kept throughout this whole journey from what I've seen online. And like if you saw episode 7 of season 1, then you know that Zan has a YouTube and also her Instagram page is where she documents a lot of this. So if you have any more questions about this journey, single motherhood by choice or on purpose, or just motherhood in general, because now the process of how she conceived was what was the choice. Now she is now parenting. And so just like you, if you want to be a mother or you're already a mother, you can still ask questions or go and be inspired by her journey as well. So make sure you hit up the links in the description to check out her platforms and where she can continue to inspire. And I need to go back and watch some of these because I had no clue you were in labor for a week.
Yes, I documented. It's in a highlight, so
Okay, I will go back and watch. Well, let's transition to the gratitude segment of the podcast. It's known as Give. This is where we identify our gratitude, our intentions, our faith or focus, as well as how we're going to take action and really live out this thing, live out our gift. And so, G for me, in terms of like gratitude or goal, talking about this made me think about my mom. Talking about the conception, pregnancy, labor, delivery story. I'm really grateful for my mom, especially during her journey of single motherhood, for all of the sacrifices she made because I can remember it. Like I can remember her working multiple jobs and me having to go to my grandmother's house all the way in DC from Manassas and just a lot of the village that was around us. And so I'm grateful for that. And like how you talked about it too, like having your mom present, having her be a part of your village. Like I'm really grateful for that. My intention is to make sure that I'm advocating for myself, to be an advocate. I think already in my field as a mental health professional, I'm an advocate, but I think even more being an advocate for myself and other Black women. My faith or focus. What do I want my faith or focus to be? I think I'll do focus. I think I want my focus for the next couple of months is to ask more questions with my current boyfriend to figure out, what's in your family lineage? Y'all have any genetic disorders? Are you a sickle cell trait carrier? Let me talk to your mama. And so that's also my take action of like really be informed of who I plan on possibly having kids with in the future. I think that's one thing I also learned from you during this episode. So that was really helpful. What would
yes,
be
you
your
guys can
gift?
go get genetic tested together.
We can where?
So there's like I want to say like SEMA is like a genetic
Okay.
test.
Okay.
I think that's what it's called. But there's
Uh-huh.
multiple different tests. So some
Oh
tests
wow.
for 50 genetic disorders, some tests for hundreds, I guess. But you can
Wow.
just go get tested and see. Um,
Good
a
to
lot
know.
of people will do IVF to prevent a genetic disorder from passing on. So it wouldn't be like, oh, we can't have kids together. It would just be, let's take
Now we
another
have to do
step. Yeah.
another approach.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
makes
So
sense.
my gratitude would be
Uh-huh.
towards the people who support me without, I guess, kind of making it seem like I'm, or we're different, like we just fall into
Mm-hmm.
line and
Mm-hmm.
life is normal, So
Yeah.
that's what I'm grateful for. Um, intention.
Eyes intention. Yep.
Hmm.
What do
I
you want
guess
to embody?
I want to be like something I want to be intentional about.
Yeah.
So I want to be intentional about posting more consistently and
Mm-hmm.
allowing women to really see what this life is like. I
Yeah.
don't typically just talk about as a single mom by choice, I have to take my
Yeah.
kids to the doctor by myself. You know what I mean? But I
Yeah.
love to just give real raw everyday
Yeah.
life, and so be more
Yeah.
intentional about that. Okay,
Stay their
focus.
focus.
So I would say I want to focus more on the people who want to be here.
Yes.
So the people who want to be in my life, the people who want to be positive influences on my children, the
Mm-hmm.
people who want to be here. That's what I
Okay.
want to focus on.
I love
And
that.
then what's T
Take
again?
action. How are you going
Take
to take
action.
action? Anything you want to make sure you do?
I want to take action in being with my kids, getting them to know their siblings more.
Okay. Yes, because you did mention your Sloan's brother and
Hmm.
how his mom is in communication with you. So, like,
Yeah.
this is like a side note, but of the other children that were born from this donor, you all somehow you kind of found each other.
Um, as far as we know
Yeah.
every sibling that has been born from this stone.
Wow.
I think
How
there
many
might be
are there?
one, about like 8 or 9.
Okay. I thought you were going to say 80.
No, Jesus, no.
Okay.
Um, as long as he doesn't donate to another sperm bank.
Yeah. Oh
Oh
my
yeah.
goodness. So bad.
Mm-mm.
So I love that. So yes, your take action is for them to get to know their siblings, the girls to get to know
Yes.
their siblings. Beautiful. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing your gift. If you're listening and you want to share your gift, you can do so. Remember, check us out on Instagram. There is a reel that explains what is gratitude or a goal, what is intention, how do you identify your focus or the area where you need more faith, and how do you take action. All right. All right. So the last segment is called Tunes ATM. So this is where we identify what we've been rocking to. What are we listening to? What's the music that we've been enjoying? And it could be related to the episode, or it can just be something that we've been bumping in the car in our headphones recently. And so I'll let you go first, Dan, in sharing what is your vibe tune at the moment? What you been listening
Okay.
to?
It's so funny that you asked because in college when we would like pregame and stuff, I
Uh-huh.
would tell them, "Oh, play this song." And I
Mm-hmm.
had one friend, Neka, and she would always be like, "Zan, that's old." I'm just not the like Beyonce's album just
Getting out
came
of the
out.
new stuff. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I
You
know
couldn't
she
tell
did
me one song.
Jolene. Like that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I've been listening to and I love the song Lucky Girl by Carlina. There's a
Uh-huh.
sped up version, but it
Uh-huh.
pretty much is just talking about how like pretty much manifesting your dreams.
Oh, I
Um,
do know the song you're
yeah,
talking
you're a lucky
about.
girl.
Yeah, I'm a lucky girl.
Yes, I love
Uh-huh.
that song.
Okay. I like that. So, what have you manifested recently?
Hmm. I think I manifested my children. I
I know
literally
that's
took a
right.
picture of, so I told you we were at urgent care today, or the doctor's office or
Mm-hmm.
whatever today. And I took a picture of Sloan when she was at a checkup, when she was a
Uh-huh.
baby. And
Uh-huh.
today I took a picture in the same exact spot with her holding her sister. So,
Oh,
not a huge
wow.
thing, but
No, but yeah, I don't believe in coincidences. I do believe
no.
that that was definitely divine and just kind of like a confirmation of like you're in the
Mhm.
right place. You're right where
Yeah.
you need to be, even though you're at the doctor's office.
Yeah. Right?
Oh, I love that. So lucky girl, let's manifest. Actually, think about your dreams and
Mm.
bring them to fruition. You're lucky.
Yes.
I love it. Okay, so my vibe tunes, there's this one song. So I recently went to Jamaica and my best friend kept listening to this song while we were sitting on the beach, right? It was a vibe, like bring your speaker out or watching the waves and being all, deep. And so we're both water signs. So we're definitely both real deep. So she kept playing this one song and I loved it. And there's now this like genre where like some Christian songs sound like R&B or like
Hmm.
soul. And so at
Yeah.
first listening to it, I was like, okay, this is cute. And then I kept listening to the lyrics and I was like, oh, this is a Christian song. Like this is more
Ooh.
like a kind of like body roll,
Right.
like
Stop the
soul
body
song.
roll. This is praise and
So
worship, okay?
it's praise and worship, girl. I was like, oh, Jesus, forgive me, Lord. Even though I'm still, giving him a little bit of my worship. But the song is called Be Still by an artist named Annatoria or Annatoria. It's spelled Anna
Okay,
and
I
then like
see it.
Toria, like the
Okay.
end of Victoria.
Mm-hmm.
And basically the lyrics are talking about like no matter what you go through, God is gonna be still. He's like, you be still, right? Like let him do what he needs to do, but also recognize that no matter what you're going through, he's still gonna be there. And so I really like that one. And then also, I randomly yesterday when I was driving started listening to Ariana Grande's new album. I have not listened to that child's music in so long, but Apple Music was like, "This is a new release," and I said, "Okay, let's listen." And there was only one song that I actually really liked, maybe two, but one of them is called "Imperfect for You," and it's a love song, and it's talking about how even though you have all these imperfections, and it sounded like me because one of the part of like the pre-chorus, she was saying like, I get anxious, I get effed up sometimes, I be stressed out, I'm too much, but I love you just the way that you need me to. And so even though I'm imperfect in all these ways, I still can love you the way that you need to be loved, or I'm still just perfect for you. And then the last, I did listen to a little bit of Beyonce's album. Fell asleep last night though. Like I couldn't stay up and listen to the whole thing after midnight. I was like, girl, I gotta go to bed. I'll listen to you in the morning.
Right?
So I was driving to Target this morning and one of the songs is called YaYa. And it gives me like that 70s, 80s like dance music feel. Like kind of like the old, like not variety shows, but those, if you think about like Dream Girls when they would like perform on TV and it would
Okay,
be like
okay,
those
okay.
cute little dance numbers where the white
Mm-hmm.
kids will be dancing in front of the cameras. It gives
Oh, and
that
the
kind of
cameras are like
energy.
panning around like this.
Yeah, like hairspray. Yes,
Yes. Okay. Okay. Okay.
it's giving that kind of energy. And so it made me
Okay.
feel good. I was like, this is cute. And so that's my third song for my vibe tunes at the
Okay.
moment. So if you have some music that you'd like to share or listen to, you can email it to us. But also remember that the Vibe Tunes ATM playlist, everybody, is in the description. It's on YouTube, Apple Music, as well as Spotify. So those songs will be up there. But yes, we have reached the end. Thank you, Zan. Thank you,
Of
Alexandra. I can call
course.
you Zan, but yes, for coming and joining and sharing your story once more. Thank you for your transparency and, just for being very candid about the fact that being a single mom by choice, you go through a lot of the same things that any other mother
Yeah.
would go through. You just did it on purpose and made a very informed choice as far as like who you decided to do it with. So I appreciate you for seeing me.
I appreciate you for having me.
Yes, yes. All right, you all. Well, let's connect. Remember to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube at Here We Are the Podcast with Teka. And make sure you subscribe on YouTube and everywhere that you can get podcasts. Apple Music, Spotify, I don't know what, Amazon Music, wherever you can get a podcast. Make sure you subscribe and rate so that these episodes can get to the people that they're meant to reach. I really appreciate the support. We are in season 2. I hope that you all have a happy Mother's Day. And yeah, see you next time.